Examples of figurative works include this early masterpiece by the Bellelli family. It's a painting about his Aunt Laura, her husband, and their 2 young daughters. Laura is seen in mourning clothes, symbolizing the death of her father, whose picture is behind her there on the wall. Laura stands certainly dignified and almost austere. She's connected compositionally to her daughters by her gestures. And of course what we see is the husband appears separated from his family. His association with business and the outside world is implied by his position at the desk. The familial tensions in this are palpable. It's a truly honest depiction of that family. Going on with honest depictions, Degas was a teller, like it is sort of an artist. And both of these paintings portray his good friend Mary Cassatt in somewhat indecorous poses, both of them. Cassatt there is seen on the right, leaning on a cane or umbrella and looking at paintings in the Louvre, while her sister Laura is sitting on a bench, more interested in her book. Mary Cassatt, in fact, painted at least one very, very gorgeous picture of Laura reading a book, so I imagine it's a tie back to a Degas painting as well. Well, as you might expect, Mary Cassatt was not wild about either of these paintings. But she did own the portrait to the left, and she appreciated the skill it took to paint them both. I don't think I'd want that picture, though. Taking a look again behind the scenes, what do we see? Degas, ever the experimenter, making an etching of the same pose, and that etching is in our show. And what we see here, he was exploring with the etching technique and its impact on the image. Having this etching in the show is very interesting for its experimental nature. So we'll see that when the exhibit comes. We talked some about the new technologies that had an impact on his work, and I want to dash through those for you. One need look no further than this painting of Viscount Lepide and his 2 daughters for an example of motion, certainly in the narrative. It's a commentary on the hurried pace of modern life, as no one seems to be moving in the same direction. The work also reflects the influence of photography in the figure at the far left, who's been unceremoniously cropped. We imagine that part of the narrative, as far as that concerns, is that there's so much more happening behind him. But as for the cropping, I think most of us have cropped people in photographs all the time, but maybe not on purpose. So this is Viscount Lepide, and in a work called Moonlit Landscape. This, by the way, was made by Viscount Lepide, and it was made in the same year as the painting of him. And it's in our show, which includes works by many of Degas' colleagues and contemporaries. Degas worked in many media. He explores repetitive movement here in pastel. He made a great many works in pastel. It's interesting, it's animated for its repetitiveness. Looking more at the impact of technology in Degas' works, you can see here the hot light of rudimentary lighting in both of these images. But as harsh as it is, the advance in lighting was an exciting aspect of the times. So this picture is about a lot of things, including advances in technology in terms of lighting. Both images reflect the point of view of a camera. They're not necessarily the best views. And of course, in the history of art, painters almost always chose the best views for their paintings. So this introduction is a new perspective that most people would have recognized. I think Degas as well was fascinated with motion, and with the steep angle view, which might have been the perspective of the camera. So we see here 4 dances, motion, steep angle of view. And I think we're left to wonder a few things. Whether this is actually 4 dancers. There's a tiny bit of a head, tiny bit of an arm there. But whether it's the motion of 4 dancers or whether it's reflecting Margaret's studies on motion, this could be one figure in a series of actions. We don't really know. Degas loved horse racing. I bet you all know that. And this image is an early one depicting horse jockeys before a race. Its feel is certainly excited anticipation. In the background there, factories are churning out smoke. More a symbol of great technological advances of the time than a commentary on the environment. And our friend Cropping is over there to the far right on that image. At the same time that he was painting the work we just saw, he made this drawing, which is in the show. It's unusual among Degas' horse drawings for not depicting a racehorse, but rather he was clearly studying anatomy in what ultimately became a very sensitive and realistic image. So I'm looking forward to seeing that one. We have here in the next one another beautiful racetrack painting. This one in keeping with the Impressionists' interest in capturing light and shadow. And of course the ever-present factories are way in the background there. And another rather extraordinary camera angle. I'm showing you this one so that we all can feel better about our own snapshots. If that's worth millions of dollars, maybe ours are too. So far in this very brief presentation, we've seen paintings, we've seen drawings and etchings and pastels, and now sculpture by Edgar Degas. He made a great many sculptures, and he made them in wax for the most part and left them in his studio on his death. With the permission of his family, they have since been cast in bronze and are seen now throughout museums in the United States and abroad. Many scholars argue, by the way, that he was the greatest sculptor of the 19th century, that in their view he eclipses Rodin. So we started with wax and we went to cast in bronze in order to get a good feel for the work. But this is the only sculpture released in his lifetime. And it's a mix of bronze and textiles that must have been very startling to his contemporaries. And if there was any doubt, Degas also experimented with photography. This is a beautifully evocative photograph of a friend made in 1895, and it too is in our show. So you can see Degas had a remarkably active mind. He experimented in many artistic media. And in our show, Edgar Degas, the Private Impressionist, we'll be looking at his works on paper, most of which were intended for himself. It does a wonderful job of rounding out Degas, the artist, that is exciting and worthwhile. So we see in our exhibit then a great artist studying and drawing some more. And really looking forward to the show, which is less than, I think, 3 weeks away, or is it less than 2 at this point? In any event, that was a race through 19th century and all of Degas, and I hope it was helpful and not too fast. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Was he successful in his artwork? Did it support him? Was he well known and sought after and commissioned? And
yeah, it became that way, as a matter of fact. Now, he was born into a wealthy family, so he had the luxury of not needing to sell his own works. And so, but as time went on in his lifetime, there was great appreciation for his work. More now as we find things like the sculptures and the works on paper and prints and all sorts of other things. But I'm really proud of this exhibit. I think we're all presenting something that is an important point on Degas that we should be sure gets made known and for greater understanding of him.